The purpose of today's webinar is twofold. First, we will explore the limitations that many organizations face with the Solidworks ePDM and why 3DEXPERIENCE platform, whether on cloud or premises, is the natural next step. And then secondly, we will present the best practices for ePDM to 3DEXPERIENCE migration based on the SteepGraph project experience, and show you how our ETL migration tools reduce human errors, accelerate timelines, ensure predictability, and lower the risks. So with that said, I'm delighted to welcome our colleague Jeff Erno from the SO Systems. Jeff will share his perspective on the challenges of ePDM, the value of moving to 3DEXPERIENCE, and the differences between the cloud and on-prem deployment options. So Jeff, with that said, over to you.
Great, thanks, Rade. So talking about what the limitations are with using SolidWorks ePDM, it's a very good tool for managing your CAD data. Many customers have been using that for years and continue to use it. But the challenge really comes in with how does it connect with other parts of your enterprise? So here what we've got on the display is CAD on the far left. That's SolidWorks ePDM. But then you've got lots of other things that are happening with that data within your company. Most companies are going to have some other place to manage where their bill of material is. That's PLM on the right. They may be doing manufacturing engineering and trying to use the geometry in order to do that. So that's the manufacturing. That's the little bit right of middle. And many companies also are moving more and more towards having virtual testing rather than physical testing, at least in the run-up to the physical testing, to try to minimize their costs and maximize the results for the iterations that they do. And the problem with that is that each one of these silos, it has a completely different pedigree of where they came from. So they're going to have different user interfaces. They're going to have a different data model. The actual way that the data is stored in the database may be different. Certainly different security models, which we'll get into when we start talking more about the various methods of how you could store your data in 3DEXPERIENCE. But the challenge here is that these are all silos, that there's no connection between them. So it's a lot of export your data out of ePDM, import your data into these other areas, thereby giving you a problem with keeping things in sync, which has been historically a major difficulty for most of our customers, and a big reason why you would move to 3DEXPERIENCE, as we'll describe as unifying in that data model. So let's go on to the next slide. So in 3DEXPERIENCE, everything is all in one place. Your SolidWorks data, your CAE data, the BOM view of your CAD data, all of that is all in one place. Unified data model structure, which has a lot of benefits when it comes to governance, and consistent user interface. So if you're one of these companies that maybe has people that wear multiple hats, they don't have to code switch in order to switch from one user interface to the other. Also, the security is handled at in one common place, so you're not dealing with the fact that, well, I've got this geometry that I'm moving over to CAE. It's classified a certain way in one place. I need to make sure it's classified in another for limited exposure. Everything is all handled in the same way. And the fact that it's all in one place and everything's connected makes things easier to find. It makes collaboration easier. And we've seen customers that have productivity improvements of 30% or more. Let's go to the next slide. So here you have a little bit of a view of our path going from being innovators in 3D way back in the early 80s to digital mockup, the DMU that was in the late 80s, bringing lots of geometry together into an overall product for easy review and designing in context, all the way through PLM that you see there. And what we have is, in the past, lots of different tools, and you see a lot of them that are on there that are all systems that are now part of our portfolio. And those, rather than being connected, as you're seeing there, in a point-to-point solution where you've got some level of interaction between them in integration, we spent the effort in order to migrate or port all of that into one single place in order to manage the complete data in all of its different domains in 3DEXPERIENCE. And of course, we support many different industries, as you see listed along there to the right. And on the lower right, you see the data model that we have and the breadth of it, all of which has been brought together. We've got requirements up front. Functional and logical is sort of your system engineering portion of it. You've got physical, which is your engineering definition, and then it even continues further into manufacturing and service, where you're able to use that 3D in order to help you do that manufacturing engineering and service engineering. All of that, because it's all in one place, has a single governance layer that's in between it, whether it's for classification management, configuration management, a topic that's really important to me. We deal with a lot of companies with different configurations, change management, project management. All of that happens across all these different domains so that you've got one single place in order to manage all that in a very connected way. Let's go on to the next slide. So here's a quick view of the user interface. It's a dashboard-based user interface with series of tabs in them. Here you've got an example of a 3D where I've got a product, which is a smoke detector, and I've got the ability to be able to see the product structure as well as see it in 3D, complete with cross-highlighting. Even some nice examples of ways to be able to consume it by that exploded view you're seeing on the screen right now. So very 3D, very interactive, very modern user interface that's fun to use and easy to use. Also, we've got change is integrated within that. So you can see I highlighted the change action, and that works. So while you're doing your work, the system will record it for you. Here, I've got an example of lots of different dashboards that could be all for various purposes. And then the compass, the blue ball in the upper left, has all the different roles that you've been assigned and all of the different tools that are available to you to add to these dashboards. Our search, where here I'm just doing a fast search. You can see how quickly it comes up. That comes up because of our index search. Everything in the database, everything in 3DEXPERIENCE is indexed and searchable at a heartbeat, and you can get access to all the metadata that you need or be able to use this in order to drag and drop into the various widgets that we have in the platform. So very nice user interface, easy to use, and consistent across all those domains that historically were siloed with separate user interfaces. Next slide, please. The other thing too, and we're going to get into this a little bit later when we talk about integrations and migrations and what have you, is all that data and all those different domains is a lot to be able to do all in one big bang. And there's always a possibility that you've got something unusual that you need to connect your data to. Well, we do have the ability to be able to connect to other things because our software platform is completely open. So we support industry standards like functional mockup interface or STEP, or we've got lots of different out-of-the-box connectors that our partners provide, including SteepGraph, that allow you to connect to other systems so that you can keep moving in the direction of better and better connectivity while at the same time keeping the lights on with some of the other things you're doing in a phased implementation. So very open, and SteepGraph is one of our partners that uses this openness for the work that they're doing. Go on to the next slide, please. Let's get into some deployment options. Here I'm just introducing something that Roddy has already said, that we support being on-premise or on the cloud. And the on-premise can even be done on a cloud hosting type of thing. So it all depends on what makes sense for you as far as the cost of ownership and so on. We've been working more and more with our customers in a software as a service SaaS cloud perspective. But from an end user's perspective, it's all the same. You see on the bottom, the same exact roles, the same exact interface is all going to look the same regardless of your one versus the other, but we support both. Next slide, please. So just a little bit as to why you would do SaaS versus on-premise. One thing is agility. Trying to keep up with a lot of the regulatory standards is a very difficult thing to do. In this case, we would be doing that for you so that we're making sure that the system that you're using is keeping up with all those regulations. Competitiveness, it's from a cost of ownership perspective, it's going to be lower. So you end up having to be or getting to be much more competitive because your cost of doing business and focusing on what you really need to do, designing great products and services, becomes the same while you're doing that without having to burden yourself with a lot of the IT and infrastructure and things that are more details beyond what your business normally does. Also, security. Because we support many different customers, we can invest in security that is top-notch, world-class security that then can be used by all of our different customers. And our security as well has multiple different levels, as we'll get to in the next slide. So for our offerings, our standard one is going to be public cloud, where you're a tenant within a overall set of resources that can be shared. Your data is segregated, everything is safe, and it's GXP ready, but you're sharing resources, and depending on the size of your business, that could very well make sense. Private cloud could make sense when you're a bigger business and you've got more security needs for secrecy and so on that you need to deal with from a regulation or legal perspective. And then we even have dedicated cloud with dedicated physical resources managed by the right classification of people so that it can support aerospace and defense and other really strongly regulated industries that require the utmost in security levels. Let's go on the next slide. And just circling back a little bit on the integration, we support an integration framework which is industry standard with message bus as well as web services, so that you can keep the data that we have in 3D Experience in sync with something outside, whether that's driven and authored in 3D Experience and going elsewhere, like you would see from a typical ERP consideration, or if it's maybe you're in the middle of your journey and the data is in SolidWorks ePDM, and we want to keep that up to date in 3D Experience for all the other things that we provide. All of that can be done with our integration framework dealing with industry standard protocols. And we've got lots of partners that are already doing this. SteepGraph is an example of them, but you can see many others there as well. Depending on the specifics of what you're connecting to, there may be a reason to choose one versus the other. Next slide, and I think I might be done. Yep, all finished.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was an excellent overview. Just to quickly summarize what we just heard, ePDM has been indeed very solid for CAD in managing CAD data, but often results in a team working in a separate silos, which can limit the cross-functional visibility and collaboration. 3D Experience unifies that product structures and data, eliminating the need for manual exports or fragile integrations. And then, of course, cloud versus on-premise, that proverbial discussion. These two options give you flexibility, with the SaaS offering faster adoption, built-in security, and continuous update. So at least, our customers have some options and flexibility in order to onboard the users with the PLM platform. This really sets the stage for how organizations can move forward with the confidence. So let's shift gears now to how. We've seen why organizations are moving, but the migration itself can be, of course, quite daunting experience. So I'd like to introduce you to Kalpesh Zalavadia from SteepGraph. Kalpesh will walk us through the proven migration strategies, our ETL automation framework, and the real case study from one of our recent projects. So Kalpesh, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rade. So yeah, thank you, Jeff. So explaining that, okay, what is a new 3D experience system, okay, how to use and what are the UI features for that actually. So I'm going to cover that, okay, what is the key to successful migration, what are the roadmaps, what kind of strategy we have to use, okay, and what kind of tool to use, okay, so to do successful migration. So I will focus on that area. So as a step number one, okay, what are the key to successful migration? So I define that, okay, the first and important point is to clear requirements. Okay, so it should be that what are the key business goals? Okay, what do you want to in the new system? What you want to left on the old system? So that should be very clear before we start any migration. So it will help us to define the right thing to move on the new platform. Next. Can you go to the next? Yeah. Early business environment. So again, this is one of the important point that, okay, so because we are moving from old to new system, so it is important to know that what is the new system, what is the way of working on the new system. So to be familiar with that system, it is very important, understand the feature of that system. Okay, it will really help for adoption. Okay, so this is one of the important point. Third one is actually migration strategy. So again, this is very important point actually, that how to migrate data to the new platform. Okay, so based on our data size or the customers, the need actually, it might be the different ways to migrate data on the platform. the common way is a big bang. So it means that, okay, we have everything will be migrated from source system to target system. Okay. Second option might be the on demand. On demand is actually that, okay, whatever the needed on that to work on the new platform, that will be migrated, and whatever the legacy data will be migrated step by step. So that is the second approach. And the continuous migration, which is again, this is one of the way that, okay, many customer wants to do that. Okay, if they want to evaluate the new platform and still they want to continue working on the old system, so it is kind of coexistence. You can start migrating data to the new platform, but it is in read-only mode, but you still want to migrate all the data step by step, and one fine day you want to move to the new system and stop the old system. So that is a continuous migration probably. Okay. Then the process mapping, again, it is one of the important point that, okay, because we are changing or transitioning from old system to new system. So here we need to identify what is the gap in our processes from old to new system, identify that gap, do the analysis on that, and map it, okay, correctly, that, okay, what should be the new system look like on the process side. And then finally, the target system awareness. Now it is important for that, okay, who are the real users, okay, give them training, okay, make them enable little in advance before go live, so they understand that how to work on the system. So it will help us to successfully adoption of the system. So I think this is the key successful migration steps. Okay. Can you go to the next step? Yeah. So let's talk about the roadmap, okay, data migration roadmap. So as you know that, okay, so that there are the, we identified the 6 different steps, okay, that we can follow as a roadmap. The first and foremost is actually that source system analysis, which is one of the important point to understand what kind of data we have, what are the size of the data, okay, what different kind of data, non-CAD data, CAD data. So analysis of the source system is one of the important step. After doing this, can be identify what should be the migrated, what to be left over, okay, which is not treated, what is very legacy data. Okay, so based on that, actually, it can be identify what to migrate. Then to be definition. To be definition is one of the, again, important point that, okay, before we migrate, it is important that, okay, we identify what is a process gaps between source and target, and that processes need to be defined first on the target system, how to map it, how to develop it, okay, how to deploy it, and then start migration from source to target. Then planning again, that, okay, what is migration project planning, external internal team selections, hardware software selections, okay, like licenses, procurement, so pilot proof of concept, so everything can be done in the planning phase. Execution is like nothing but the project management, okay, defining that, okay, business use cases, do the dry runs, okay, do the validations and all this stuff, okay, prior to go live. Then go live preparation is again that, okay, do the UAT and user training, admin training, so that kind of stuff need to be included in go live preparation, okay. And finally, go live in this migration, checking that, okay, what we are migrating, continuous checking the dashboards, okay, and finally making sure that, okay, everything migrated correctly. So these are the different migration roadmap stages. Can you go to the next slide, please? So let's talk about what is the data migration strategies. As I told you in a previous slide that, okay, there are definitely generally customer prefer to select one of the strategy which is defined here. One is a big bang, second is on demand, and third one is continuous migration. As I told you, big bang is actually in this case, identify all the data which we need to migrate in the cutover time. After migration, all the users will be migrated to the new platform. Okay. Then all system will be read-only, and then it will relatively faster than, okay, on demand, because it is actually we are identifying and doing the migration in a one shot. Okay. Medium, it is suitable when we have that, okay, clear-cut identification of what data to migrate, and then database size is not too large. Okay, then it will be always good to do this big bang. Okay. And finally, on demand, actually, it is again like a step-by-step migration approach where you identify what are the projects or key projects to migrate first, and then and all other legacy data step by step to migrate on the platform. So here again that, okay, you are moving to the, all users will be moving to the new platform. Okay, and then source system will be read-only, and migration time will be little bit longer here because you are based on your demand, it is migrating. So it is like step by step we are doing. So it will be time will be longer. And the third one is continuous migration. As I explained you that, okay, this is used when you're migrating data on the target system, but in read-only and verification that, okay, and checking purpose, but you are not modifying data on that. You're still using your old system as a, your source system is the master system. And on one fine day, everything is validated and integration is developed for from the target system to any other your downstream systems. Okay, then finally you say, I want to go to that new system. So that is the third way to do this. So yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So let's talk about this migration approach. Okay, so here generally there are two different approach to do the migration, top-down approach and bottom-up. So top-down approach actually generally we use when we do for this actually continuous migration or on step-by-step on-demand migration, because in this case we are selecting that, okay, some products and that related data of that product should be migrated completely in that particular flow. Okay, so in this case we go from the top, identify the product, all the assembly of the product, and then all the children with that assembly and product will be migrated together in the one shot. Okay, so that is we call top-down migration. In bottom up, generally we use for that, okay, when we do the big bang, because in this case we know we need to migrate all the data, so we go from all the leaf node first, then we migrate the 2-level assembly, 4-level assembly, and go up way. So in this case actually what we migrated in the first run, okay, it will be used as a reference for the second kind of assemblies and third kind of assembly. So it will be reduce our migration time because we are reusing that whatever the loaded data in the system. Okay, so that is the bottom up approach. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. So what are the cloud migration approaches? Okay, so if we want to directly migrate to the cloud, okay, then there is a Dassault is providing the transition assistant, one of the tool, okay, which help you to directly connect from the Solidworks PDM and extract the data and transform the 3DX cloud. And behind it is using 3D. It is using step XML as a approach. Okay, it extract the data and also create the step XML and load the data in the 3DX cloud. Okay, using that PFI license. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, here second probably that, okay, there is a two-step approach also for the cloud. Okay, so in this approach, first it will be extracted the data on this that by this ETL tool, okay, SteepGraph ETL tool. Okay, then do that all the configurations, rule mapping for this, then do the transformation. Okay, transformation once is done, again it is stored in the target metadata staging table, and then finally it is loaded to the on-prem first. Okay, the reason is that, okay, this approach will be taken when we have the little complex data and you have a CAD data in some other system and your engineering data will be in other system and you want to merge together before you load. So that kind of stuff can be done using this tool. Okay, during extraction you can extract from the two different system, then define the rules to merge it together before transformation, transform, and then finally load on the prem, validate the data, and finally from on-premise to the cloud, actually we extract the 3D XML and load on the on cloud. So this is the another approach can be done for data migration, and it used when we have complex and multiple different use scenarios to migrate the data from the different systems. Yeah, please. So this is our ETL migration tool framework UI. Okay, you can see on this left-hand side, you have the different kind of extractor. Okay, so using that commands, you can extract, connect to your source system, extract the data. Once you extract the data, you need to configure and mapping what should be the target system. Okay, so whatever the type from the source to target state, from old system to new system. Okay, all kind of mappings and configuration need to be done. Okay, and also you can define your business rules. Okay, so which can convert your data from source to target based on that is some condition. Okay, you want to change something, then it is also possible. Correction you want to do, that is also using business rules, you can do that. Once it is done, then you go for the transformation. So transformation will extract, it runs on the extracted data and transform in the way that, okay, target system can understand. Okay, And after doing that, actually, you can use that UPS loading for the CAD data and generic loading for the non-CAD data. Okay, so then both the data can be migrated in the platform. Okay, and you also have a facility to analyze the data, extracted data analysis and target data analysis, which can help you to see that, okay, what you extracted, okay, what are the different attributes, and how to, based on the different column attribute values, you can show the charts, okay, and counts, and you can see that real data, what you want to drill down. Okay, and same way you can do same kind of chart on the target data analysis also, where you can see that, okay, what is migrated, what is the status, what is pending, this kind of stuff. And finally, you can also generate different kind of reports out of this. Okay, and then you can see that, okay, where we are as a progress. Okay, so this is how the UI is built for this ETL migration. Can you go to the next, please? So what is the benefit? As I told you, this there are all automated stuff. Extraction, transformation, loading will be done after once you define the configuration mapping. Okay, and then you start. It will be automatically extract the data from the source and transform and load. So definitely, we step by step you validate, make sure that everything is working, and then it automatically do these migrations. Okay. Time saving, as I told you that, okay, if you validate it once, okay, and then all this data will be follow the same process. So it will, you don't need to intervene much on this actually. If something related to CAD data failing, then only just validate what are the reason for the failing. And after correction, you can just rerun again this process. So that way it is definitely reduced time. Error reduction, because there is a built-in data validation pre-checks is there. Okay, you can define the transformation loading, so it will reduce the error, and you upfront you know that what kind of thing you need to correct it. Finally, flexibility, because it supports, okay, multiple different source as extraction. Okay, you can do partial data loading, you can do full data loading, you can continuous loading. So all this kind of option is available. Okay, and then it's really flexible to do the data migration on this side. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so what are the which risk mitigation techniques should be implemented? Okay, so to handle this migration, okay, these are the different 5 points. Okay, we check that, okay, we use that, okay, rollback and backup plans. Okay, checkpoints. Okay, what to we check with the all the stakeholder to make sure that, okay, they understand what are the data we are migrating, validate with them. So that are different checkpoints with the different stage we do. Staging environment creations, which is exactly same with the production. So whatever we migrated, okay, can be validated upfront in before we migrate to the production system. Exception handling, and then user training. So these are the, I think, checkpoints. If you do, then definitely it will help you to peaceful migration. Yeah. Next. So this is a typical project plan. Okay, generally we divide in different phases. One of the migration phase is development phase, where we do this the configuration of the system tools, do the small extraction, transformation, loading, and making sure that, okay, all the connectivity is there, validating the very small assembly and making sure that, okay, it do all the mapping rightly. Okay, so finally, once it is done, then we go for the dry runs, where we identify the, okay, so some predefined assemblies to migrate in dry run 1, validated by the key users. Okay, then we take in dry run 2 little more assemblies and the different kind of combination of the drawing part assemblies, and then migrate it again, validated by the key users. And finally, in dry run 2, we go for that full migration when it is required on Big Bang. Otherwise, actually, the selected product migration. After doing this, actually, we go for the UAT. In UAT, actually, we set up everything for the UAT system, then do the again full migration. Little more business users will be involved in this, validated by them, and finally go for this go live preparation and go live. So after go live, we also provide the support to make sure that, okay, all users trainings will be done rightly on, and also they have a handholding required. Okay, next. Okay, so generally for this kind of project, we do assessment workshops. In the purpose of assessment workshop, to understand your scope, data analysis, and define the scope of that. Okay, yeah. identifying that, okay, what are the percentage of the data need to be migrated, what are the old data, kid data, non-kid data, this kind of stuff, okay. Understanding the challenge of the current data, okay, and assess migration data quality by identifying any missing element in the process, okay. So that is fit gap analysis can be identifying this, and finally propose that, okay, what is the right strategy to migrate data. And as an outcome of this work, so we provide solution approach, milestone and timeline, okay, a RASI matrix, risk and mitigation plan, infrastructure dependency, and finally commercial. So these are the outcome of these workshops. Yeah, please go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a small demo. Okay, so okay, just wait for 1 minute before running. So I'll just explain. So we provided the widget, okay, on the platform. So on 3DEXPERIENCE platform only, you can see this UI. Okay, so where on the left hand side you can search for the data in the SolidWorks PDM. This particular scenario we develop for the on-demand migration, where the users can search the data from SolidWorks ePDM directly from the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Okay, once it is searched, they can add in the loading scope and finally load from there actually. So it is based on the selection, it can be load end to end. So let's see that how it works. Can you go please? Okay, so you see that, okay, we are on left hand side, we are searching the assembly and we are searching for the name for that assembly. Okay, so we selected and drag and drop to that loading scope. After doing that, I am saying start migration. So once I start migration, it will show me all these processes showing here that what extraction, transformation, loading. So first it will do extraction, then transform the data, and loading will be started afterwards. Of course, all this mapping will be done in backend, okay? And once everything is done, then this will be used by the end user, so to migrate on-demand migrations, okay? So here it is loading. Once it is loading, done, then you can see the history also, who can miss, it will show that what is loaded, okay, when it's transferred, which batch it is used for that. So everything we captured and show to the users, so they can always see that, okay, what they have loaded. Okay, this is the history, they can check. We also provide some dashboards, okay, so migration dashboards. So it will show you that counts during the extraction, what kind of component counts, assembly count, or what is transform. After transformation, what is loaded successfully, what is in progress, what is failed, that can also see. When you click on these bars, then it will show the data also that what is loaded. Okay, so you can always check this dashboards and deep dive inside. So once it is done, then we go to the platform and see that, okay, what I migrated, it is visible or not. So I'm searching for the same assembly on the platform. So once I search, I can open in one of the out-of-box widget, okay, so where you can see that, okay, I think Jeff showed the exactly same widget before. So I open it there. You see on the left-hand side, you see the structure of the assembly and all the data. And right-hand side, you see that 3D design of that particular assembly. Okay, so you can verify this way and see that everything works perfectly fine. Okay, so once I think it is done, then this process is completely done. Okay, you migrated. Okay, and you can also see the same window that, okay, what you already loaded. So this is the example of on-demand migration or continuous migration. In both the cases, this widget can be used. Okay, and for this full migration. Okay, so we have another widget where we can set up that, okay, all the batch, because in this case we don't need to search anything, right? We are migrating everything. Yeah, go to the next slide please. Yeah, so I think as an experience wise, so you can see that, okay, on whatever you see on the left hand side, all the source system we are supporting for extraction and transform to the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So it includes Teamcenter, Smart Team, SolidWorks ePDM, okay, Windshield, or folder system, Oracle Agile, RS, anything. Okay, so that extract and transformation loading will be done from all these possible source systems. Okay, go to the next, please. Okay, so here is a case study. What I just want to explain that one of our customer in, go to the next slide, please. So case study is regarding that one of our Denmark industrial equipment leader customer. Okay, so they want to migrate from ePDM to 3 platform. Okay, so on this migration, the scope is actually SolidWorks ePDM with the 4 different sites. Okay, and smart team for non-aging data, and volume is around 2 million records in both the system and 500K files for CAD, non-CAD files. Okay. Target system with 3DEXPERIENCE Innovia, okay, and then duration of this project was we completed in 7 months go live plus 4 weeks as a support. Okay, problem what we faced during that, okay, is there are mixed engineering plus non-CAD engineering data, okay, data inconsistency, sometimes long names, need to see that how to handle these revision in the file names, okay, so comma or missing attributes. So this kind of issues we found in our after extraction. So with our rules, we are able to correct it before transformation loading. So it really helps us. Special file types to handle. So this is again that one of the problem we identified in Solid during that migration. Approach what we take is actually attribute-based mapping to the unified product structure. Okay, real-time ETL migration widget for extraction. So as I shown you that extraction, transformation, and loading will be done using that way. So user feel they are on the same system doing that migration. Validation and drill down to ensure that integrity before loading. Okay, and then finally, it's cross-site the data will be migrated and global connectivity, collaborative space for cross-site accessibility. Please go to the next slide, please. So as outcome, that successful migration around 2 million records and 500K files. Okay, clean attribute-driven organization in 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Transparent progress tracking, as you saw that from the reports, you can see, okay, different graphs. On time go live with the high adoption across the 2 sites. Lesson learned during that, okay, clear scope definition is one of the important point. We learned that, okay, real time visibility, where we are seeing the graphs of what is loaded, not loaded, and identification of that. Stakeholders alignment, okay, doing the meetings with them before go live, after go live, so they understand what is a step-by-step process for that, and change management focus. So I think this is the important lesson what we learn on our successful migration. Please go to the next slide. So that by that, actually, I think this was the last slide, and that was a short introduction how our ETL tool works in small demo. Yeah, Rade, thank you.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, Kalpesh. Perfect on time. So we will have enough time to answer any questions and wrap up. Just to summarize what we heard from you, this 5-phase roadmap provides structure and clarity from assessment to go live. And that's quite critical for execution, to have a structured way of moving from phase to phase.
Yes.
Then using our ETL automation framework, it cuts manual effort and reduces error and significantly accelerates the execution of the projects. That's, I think, quite critical, because if you get, using spreadsheets and start moving data around and try to do the mapping in a spreadsheet, we all know how that usually ends up.
You're right. So it's give the little more confidence when you see that, okay, the data moving and show the status, and when you click, you can see the real what is transferred. So it will give the real-time picture to you.
And it also points out, immediate conflicts, to help resolution. So you don't have to do too many iterations. You can immediately see where the conflicts are and solve them before you load the data, right? Okay, and then this Denmark case study shows that even complex multi-site, multi-CAD migrations can go live successfully on time with a strong validation and especially risk control. You need to stay on top of the things, right?
Yep, correct.
So it's really interesting and encouraging, I would say, to see how these projects are not just possible, but also repeatable. Then, we can do this with a predictable outcome.
Correct.
Okay. Now we can turn the table, and now we would like to hear from you, the people who are attending this webinar. Please share your questions in the chat if you haven't done it yet, and we'll answer as many as we can during this session. If we don't manage to answer any questions, then we will send you all the Q&A after the meeting, or we'll post it somewhere on our website. We'll also bring back Jeff and Kalpesh to help us answer some of your questions. So let me see. Okay. We have a few questions. First, I'll ask a few questions that interest me. I'm going back to this Denmark case study. And Kalpesh, you've been involved in that project personally, I know, for quite a long period. Looking at that Denmark case study, what was your biggest challenge and how did you address it?
Yeah, so I think, as I told you, one of the challenge that they have a two different system for one data is coming from the CAD, it's EPDM, and then they also have this other data from engineering data from other system. So it was actually challenging that making sure that both data, how to make sure that it has rightly merged. Sometimes it is identification what it is common data again, and then finally load into one system. So I think one of the interesting and challenging what I would say project for us.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Very insightful. Jeff, I have a question for you. You mentioned the siloed applications, which is a challenge not just in this specific case, but for many engineering organizations. Can you share a real-world example of how these silos between CAD and CAE and manufacturing systems impact collaboration?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, let's do a couple of examples. Let's look at a PLM BOM type of scenario and a CAE scenario. So from a BOM perspective, typically what you'll have in the example of SolidWorks ePDM is that you're doing your product structure, you're doing your design there. But then when you go over and you want to have that in a bill of materials, it's in a completely different system. So now you have to either build an integration between the two, or you have to be exporting data and then importing data and then modifying it. And when you do that, you're going to run into errors when that occurs. Also, if there's always going to be a temptation, and we had this a lot at one of my prior employers, where you would just change the BOM. You don't actually go back and change the CAD. And when you do that, you've lost any hope of maintaining some 3D semblance of what that BOM really looks like. With 3DEXPERIENCE, you don't have that. When you bring the data in as 3DEXPERIENCE physical products, you have the BOM just as a different view. There's no issue between keeping them in sync because they're one and the same. Likewise, the other example that I mentioned was CAE. I used to do a lot of finite element analysis back in my day. And when you were to use that, you're doing an export out of your PDM system. You're doing an import into your CAE system, ANSYS, whatever, your MSC Patran. And then the data now is immediately out of sync. So you don't know if something has changed inside of the source system, that you might be working on something that's old, that now whatever you did is somewhat of a waste of time because now you have to redo it when you get synchronized with what the new item is. With 3DEXPERIENCE, all that stuff is natively connected. So you will be able to see immediately, am I out of date? Is there a new revision? Is the data that I've got not up to date with what's been latest saved in the database? And with a button click, you're able to update all of that. So it becomes much more straightforward. You have much less waste of a time, and everything has been connected. The other piece too is that if you ever wanted to figure out what is it that's affected by what I've done, and to sort of get your arms around what the cost of that change would be, sort of an impact analysis. The fact that you've got all the data connected in the platform says, if I were to change this model and do some improvements on it, what else would I have to do? And by tracing all of the connections, the things that are natively connected, you can immediately get your arms around how big the change is to decide, is this juice worth the squeeze to even make this change? And then allows you to plan the change, because now you know what objects are affected. You can then, in an organized way, all based off of the data that's in the system, not tribal knowledge talking to somebody or trying to figure it out yourself, doing a bunch of forensic work, you can immediately progress through and complete your change because everything's connected. Much more difficult, much more time consuming, much more error prone in a disconnected, siloed way.
Well, so many good examples. Thank you very much. We have another question, I think, related to you, Kalpesh, maybe. The question is, can we stage the migration in phases, for example, by business unit, by location, by site? Is that possible?
Yeah, so as long as from metadata, if you are able to identify, what is coming from which site, so there are some custom attribute to identification, so definitely we can do this actually step by step or project by project or site by site.
Okay, and that can be synchronized with the user onboarding, training, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, okay,
So it's
sounds good.
always need to discuss with the customer that, okay, what actually, for example, all the data related to one site, it is complete product data, or
Mm,
there are multiple site data. In this case, we need to think at the time and do that, okay, product completion data is important, right? Not only the site data.
Yep, makes sense. The next question is related to user onboarding. What is the typical user training effort needed post-migration, and what stages that user training has?
Okay, so as I told you that in the first slide, okay, so the early involvement of user is very important. So first, it is important to, in this, when we start the planning at the time, the demo of the out-of-the-box system to give them, to make sure that, okay, they understand how it works, how it integrated with the SolidWorks, okay, how they do that, their day-to-day work. So understand, do the small videos for that, okay, explain them, okay, so they basically, that way of working will can be changed and define that upfront, okay. So once it is done to the key user or admin people, okay, so then during that, okay, UAT time phase, okay, it will be give after UAT, it should be, and before go live, that mass training should be given to that all end users, okay, and then once it is done, then roll out this go live, okay. So that is ideally planned for that.
Yes. Okay, so it's not just, preparing the system, performing the UAT, and then training the users, but it starts earlier in the project, getting
Right,
them familiar with the
right.
new environment, with the UPS, whatever the future brings. Okay.
Correct. So
Um,
it's definitely after go live, otherwise you have a lot of user issues. It is not migration issue, but because of that, not understanding the how to use the system, that kind of issue
mm,
will be more, and then it will definitely give that, okay, good sign that, okay, it is not right or something like that. So it is always good to have that understanding first and then go for that.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kalpesh. We have time for one or two more questions. The next one is a bit tricky. How do you manage performance tuning for the large assembly data once you migrate to unified product structure? How by?
So see, for big assembly, so I think I'll just explain that, okay, when we have big assembly, so I'll start from the migration perspective first, because when you have a very big assembly, then it is always not good idea to take complete assembly and migrate in one shot. Okay, so in this case, always go from bottom to up, go all the sleep node, and then some level assembly, and then top level assemblies. So it will definitely reduce your migration time also, and then success rate also faster, because it takes chunk by chunk and faster migration. Once it is done, then after do this, you know that, okay, in 3DEXPERIENCE platform, there's very index based search is there. So once it data is indexed, so it is very fast to search and expand, because everything is coming from index. Yeah, it is not hitting the database.
One thing I'd just like to add to that is
Yeah,
3D Experience does a really good job with managing large assemblies. So
correct.
the native client of 3D Experience can open large assemblies significantly faster than what competitor tools can do, even if that data is
Mm,
SolidWorks data. So when you're starting to do things like digital mock-up and reviewing of the product, or even doing 3D markup in order to communicate in a 3D way what kind of your instructions are, we handle that type of data extremely well. That's one of the things we didn't mention earlier because it wasn't really related much to data management. But as far as performance from an end user, the large assembly capabilities of 3D Experience are really quite amazing.
Yeah,
mm.
100% agree on that. Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much, both of you. Now, the next question, and I think we will use this question to wrap it up, is related to these migration strategies. So, you already mentioned this, Kalpesh, and there are multiple different ways of approaching the data migration, whether you're doing big bang, migrating all the data, or selective amount of data, or you're doing the continuous migration. Which of these approaches do you see customer favor the most, and why? When do they decide to go with either of them?
Okay, so see, it's based on the customer. It might differ based on their strategy, okay, and the size of the data definitely, and what are the legacy data they have, okay. So when they have a huge legacy data, and then they also don't know what is the data quality. Okay, in this case, they won't go for this actually complete migration, but they go by step, whatever the important and required data on the system that will be migrated first, and go for the legacy data step by step afterwards. So that is a good approach. But when you have the limited clear data set, okay, and also the data quality is good, and then you can go for that big bang. Okay, so people choose based on that. Okay, so that kind of things need to be checked and verified first.
Okay, so basically, it depends on each individual customer and their situation, their goals, objective, business
Exactly,
needs.
right. So
Right. Okay.
sometime one of the customer, I will give the example that, okay, so they have their IT plan, they want to also migrate the ERP system, and for that, okay, they want 3D Experience platform will be integrated with the SAP. Okay, so that is also in the plan in the next 5 months, and they also want to migrate UPS data. Okay, so if we go for the full migration, then it will take a little more time. So then they decided to go for that. Okay, what they need first, do all these integrations in that same time frame, and then go for the other data migrations. So in this case, it will complete their roadmap. Okay, based on this kind of selection.
Okay. All right. So that's the final question. As we wrap up today's sessions, I'd like to just remind everybody about a few key takeaways. So the first thing I want to stress out is that moving beyond EPDM is about breaking silos and enabling digital continuity, digital thread. 3DEXPERIENCE deliver real-time collaboration, unified product structures, and cloud flexibility. And then, of course, with our SteepGraph ETL-based migration framework and migration approach, moving to 3DEXPERIENCE is faster, leaner, and I think at reduced risk, more predictable outcomes.